Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And good evening, everybody, tuning into the Critical Blast channel. I am your host, RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. And normally we will sit down and we'll talk with a comic book creator, and technically we are, but this is about a different topic entirely. We're going to look into the animation industry. Now, a couple of weeks ago, our distinguished competition, Bleeding Fool, published an article regarding a whisper network in the comic book industry. And a lot of people have read about that. You've probably seen the links yourself. But it turns out that, no surprise, these kind of whisper networks exist in just about every corner of the creative community. And with us tonight, we have an insider from the animation industry who is going to tell us about his experiences in and out of animation and with blacklisting and whisper networks and all of that good stuff. So do please welcome with me to the stream, Mr. Luke Weber. Luke, welcome to Critical Blast.
Hi, RJ. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to do it. Now, of course, we spoke last time about your comic book campaign that you were working on.
Yeah.
How's that going?
We are at, I think the last time I checked, it was 73% funded, so it's coming along. And we're coming up to the halfway mark, so it's going good.
All right. So if anybody wants to check out Indiegogo and see Forsaken Gods, get a pledge on that and get that pushed out. But again, we're here for a different reason tonight. So let's get into your bona fides and explain to the people who you are and what you do or what you did do in the animation industry.
So my name's Luke Weber. I was a storyboard artist who used to work in the mainstream animation industry up until about, I guess, the beginning of 2018. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to come to terms with, just because I'm originally from Australia and I immigrated here to America in end of 2009, beginning of 2010, specifically to work in the animation industry. And I've worked hard for the last 10 years to sort of build up my abilities and also build up my professional reputation and I mean build it up as in like build it up in a good way. There was a time where I was known as the guy that you would call when you were behind schedule, because I did my boards so well and so quickly that if you would bring me on board and you were behind schedule, I would bring you back on schedule. And that happened quite a few times where, I would bring whole productions back on schedule. I wasn't someone who was just sitting around, goofing off and just, taking such a lackadaisical approach to it. I was someone who strived to be a professional and strived to be the best that there was. So.
Now, what studios were you working in and on what shows that people would know here?
Yeah, so I worked at a whole bunch of studios and a whole bunch of shows. I can just rattle them off. My first job was working at Cartoon Network on Ben 10 Ultimate Alien as a storyboard artist. And then from there, I went to Nickelodeon to work on the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV series. And that was just after Nickelodeon had bought the rights to it off of, I think, Kevin Eastman. And that was the 3D animated one. I've done freelance for Steven Universe. I did freelance for BM Puppycat. I worked on I did some freelance for Warner Brothers on their direct-to-DVD animated video things that they do. How they do that. And yes. That was Justice League Trapped in Time. I think it was Justice League Adventures Trapped in Time. I've worked on a whole bunch of stuff. I worked on Gravity Falls with Disney TVA. There's a lot of stuff that I worked on.
So you made your way around the industry. What was the last thing you worked on?
The last thing I worked on was the Bubbles animated movie for Netflix. Did you hear about that one?
I did not.
So there was this movie that Netflix had, I guess, commissioned Starburns Industry to do, and the movie was called Bubbles, and it was a story about, Michael Jackson's pet monkey Bubbles.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it was a story about Michael Jackson's early days when he was this huge pop star, but it was seen through the eyes of his pet monkey Bubbles, and sort of you saw the story and heard his thoughts. You sort of experienced it through his eyes. And Taika Waititi was attached to it to be a director, and they brought me on because they needed a storyboard artist, and so I applied and I got the job. And it was like a limited run because they were trying to get it out the door, because I think it was already behind schedule at that point.
Okay.
And like Taika had he had an office there, but he never showed up once the whole time I was there. And so it was up to me, 3 other guys, and the supervising director, who was a great man by the name of Dan Jupe, to get it done. And the complication that happened was that I think the documentary Surviving Neverland came out.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, when that came out, Taika got cold feet, and so he basically just didn't want to have anything to do with the project, but he still wanted to sort of collect the $700K paycheck that Netflix had given him to do it.
Oh.
And so they tried to get a replacement director, and nobody would do it. And yeah, the project was canceled as a result.
Give me half that. I'll direct anything they want.
I know. Well, that's what I said. Yeah. So I mean, it was a pity. Oh, sorry. Well, I was just going to say it was a pity because the script was probably one of the best scripts I'd ever read, and I was actually genuinely excited to work on it. And it was such a tragedy that it got canceled. So
yeah, so it didn't get completed, and you started to move on to look for other animation work.
Yeah,
and this would be, I guess, about the time that you were finding out you weren't getting any animation work.
Well, I mean, I had sort of found out that I wasn't getting animation work way back in 2018. When I was doing Bubbles, it was like towards the middle to beginning of 2019. It was getting harder and harder for me to get work during 2018, and so, but I had known since then that there were people out there who were trying to prevent me from earning a living doing what I love and what I'm good at.
Now, I have, of course, done some Googling, and I have uncovered your crime, sir.
You and everybody else.
it's an absolute crime that you performed here. And for those watching here, I want you to know what Luke did. Luke drew a picture of a guy that looked like him.
No. Incorrect already.
Incorrect already. I'm just reading what Google says, and they don't lie, Luke. Luke, the internet does not lie.
Yeah, everything on the internet is true, right?
Absolutely. I saw the pictures of a guy with a gemstone girl. I can't say girl because she's a gem. She's from Steven Universe. She's asexual. Yeah. Pearl.
Yeah.
A guy with Pearl. How dare you, sir? Oh, I got to get that. I've got to get that clip in my in my overlays here. I could use that quite a bit.
How dare you, sir?
How dare you, sir? Yeah, the Greta Thunberg. How dare you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's that's the ultimate meme these days. Yeah.
It is.
Is that my only crime there, RJ?
Well, no, that's actually the funny crime. There was actually an unfunny crime. That is not a crime because I don't find any criminal records of it. I went to court, and it's an amorphous crime because it goes from you either being rude to somebody to being rude to somebody with an X-Acto knife to wielding a chainsaw machete at them. It's somewhere in between there.
The chainsaw machete is new.
Oh, well. I might misremember a few things.
Sure.
But yeah, there was the accusation that you had apparently waved a knife at somebody in your studio while you were working.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Total
Wow.
bullshit. That never happened. And I know who came up with that rumor. So,
Well, do tell us. We
uh,
got. I don't care if they get drop names here. What are they going to do to me? You know.
sure. Well, that rumor was started by. I mean, there's a bit of a long story which I won't get into. If you want to know the full long story about sort of my, I guess, my quote unquote fall from grace, even though I was bullied to death by, which caused it to happen. Go on the Bunderdome. There's videos of me explaining what happened to me there. But the long and short of it was there was an individual by the name of Robert Ryan Corey who was a character designer on Gravity Falls, and he is a sociopathic narcissist. And one of the things that he's well known for is that he definitely gives credence to that term "death of a thousand cuts" because he'll you know he'll take anything you say or do and he'll twist it around and blow it up, and then he'll start to exaggerate and elaborate and turn it into something completely unrecognizable. And it's all in a bid to cast himself in a more positive light because he can't define himself by what he is. He can only define himself by what he isn't. And so he came up with a lot of those rumors, which are now circulating throughout the animation industry. And one of those rumors was that I threatened members on the animation crew of Gravity Falls. I threatened them with a knife, which is completely false. It's absolutely wrong. I never did that. Like I've heard different variations of that rumor. One was it was a knife. Another one was that I pulled a gun on people, which was complete bullshit. And it's just a perfect sort of snapshot of sort of the toxic culture that is permeating within the animation industry now, where rather than trying to, I guess, better yourself and become a better artist and do that through hard work, people have now decided that they would rather take the lazy way out and just eliminate the competition through accusation and slander. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, if anybody has noticed that animation has gotten lazy in the last 5 to 10 years, it's me. I was one of those kids who, I got up at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning with a great big bowl of cereal because I didn't want to miss anything, and I had my channel mapped all planned out. And now, I don't know, is it laziness or is it budgetary cuts? But everybody's got the same head, and there are no details.
Pretty much.
That CalArt style.
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things of everything you just said. But I mean, I want to say it's budget cuts, but the union mean the collective contracts that the Animation Guild, the union, has with all the major studios. Like the animators still get paid like the same amount of money. So I mean, budget cuts are sort of a thing, but not as big of a thing as you expect. So then that, by logic, means that a lot of these people they're not really getting these jobs based on their abilities. They're getting their jobs based on whether or not let's be honest, partly on nepotism and sheer luck. And now recently, they're getting jobs based purely on their identity, not on, anything that has anything to do with merit or skill. They've placed identity at the top of the hiring hierarchy now. So, yeah.
So they've taken the simplest shapes that they can draw and turn that into animation because there's no good animation out there anymore that I've seen, unless you're doing a full feature-length movie, and then you really you want to impress adults, then you'll draw well. But yeah, this Steven Universe stuff, this Adventure Time stuff, I keep looking at them like I don't want to watch that. The biggest one I guess that I can think of most recently is Thundercats, and I was watching the Teen Titans Go versus the Teen Titans with my son, and there was an ad there for, stay tuned afterwards for a preview of the new Thundercats Ho series, our Thundercats Roar.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, can we sit there and watch that? I'm like, yeah, but watch this first. I pulled my phone out during the commercial, and I brought up the 80s advertisement for the original Thundercats. I'm like, this is what it used to look like. And he said, he looked at the screen when they brought it back up and said, that's stupid. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, yeah, you're right. And I think you mentioned that last time I was on your stream.
I did.
Yeah.
I'd bring this in for the people who are going to come watch this for animation purposes.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, yeah, the examples you cited, She-Ra is another one.
Yeah. This
is sort of where things are starting to go now. And it's got to do with this, this cult, this, non-theist religion of identity that's going on right now. Like people who are getting top jobs and being promoted aren't what I would consider to be the kinds of people that should be getting promoted. And not only that, there are also a lot of people within the industry. You combine that with them also canceling individuals who so happen to be a lot more skilled, then you've got sort of a situation where not the the best product is not going to be made as a result. So like I've the example sorry, I'm going in circles. The examples that you gave, like everyone has talked about them online, like places like Yellow Flash and the Quartering and all these other big channels. They've talked about them, but that's kind of all they really talk about in regards to the animation industry. They sort of talk about it for a minute when it comes out, and then they kind of forget about it and move on to the next thing to be outraged about. What I've been trying to do. Oh, go ahead.
No, keep continue on, please.
Well, what I've been trying to do is trying to talk about sort of the bigger problems that are going on within the industry. I mean, everyone's talking about the big problems that are going on in the comic book industry, and that's really good, and everyone's doing a very good job of that. But I see very little similar coverage going on in regards to the animation industry, and it's kind of weird because animation and comics, obviously, there's a lot of overlap. And when that article came out on Bleeding Full about the Whisper networks, it kind of, I guess it hit home for me that this kind of behavior is rife within I'd say most of the creative industries.
Right. Now, with the Whisper network that the Bleeding Fool article referenced, that was about a Facebook group, a secret Facebook group that was called Women in Comics.
Yes.
And with animation, that Whisper network is a lot more public than a secret Facebook group. In fact, it's got its own website, and it's called Women in Animation. And they have a credo on there that pretty much lays out how they're going to level the playing field and achieve parity of gender, if not parity of merit, across the board.
That's correct. Well, I mean, that's partly correct. I don't know if the nonprofit Women in Animation is connected to the Whisper network. I'm sure there is some kind of connection. But once again, it's just speculation. I don't have any proof of that. Okay. But you are right. Yes, there is, it's Women in Animation is probably the most horrible and nefarious organization I've ever come across, because it's essentially a scam to line the pockets of its CEO, Margaret Dean. And if you look at the board of directors, most of those people are all producers and business owners of major studios. And the reason why I say it's nefarious is that, they are portraying themselves as, champions of justice, like those who will fight for, the poor oppressed women who can't get jobs in animation, and they can't break through that poor glass ceiling, which is absolute bullshit. All they really are doing is placing themselves at the top of this imaginary moral hierarchy that they've created, and they've essentially, I guess they're essentially guilt tripping all of the animation studios to comply with their demands, and it's worked like a charm. Because if you look at a lot of their events and you see the list of sponsors, it's like pretty much every major animation studio, not only here in the US, but around the world as well. They're all giving money to this organization. And the other reason I say why it's insidious is that the Women in Animation, WIA, have actually partnered with the Animation Guild. And I don't know about you, but if the Animation Guild, if you have a guild whose main job is to fight for, the working rights of its people who pay dues to it, right?
Right.
And to make sure that they keep jobs here in California, and then you have an organization that says, oh, well, we have to reach 50-50 parity by this certain time. I feel like there's a massive, massive conflict of interest there, because the majority of people who work in animation, or at least the last time I worked in it, were men. And I really think that there's a massive disparity there, and I think it's something that's going to ultimately destroy this industry.
Right. They do have they declared on their website that their goal is 50-50 by 2025.
Yes.
That means they want to have just as many women working in animation as there are men. And as you said, it's largely a male-dominated industry right now, and women have been working their way into it. Ideally, the ones who are qualified to take the positions, whether they're men or women. And to achieve a parity of 50-50 does not mean that all these animation studios are going to bring in a bunch of more empty desks and chairs and start paying more checks out.
Exactly.
To achieve their goal, they have to get rid of occupied seats.
Yes.
And clear them out so that they can move in, and that's not parity, that's an invasion.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of cancel culture. It's a more subtle version of cancel culture, and it's based purely on discrimination on immutable traits like gender. Like, we can't choose what gender we're born at, but right now, this strange magical thinking that's going on right now is that gender is a social construct, that we're not. There is no such thing as the gender binary now. We're all just these strange lumps of meat that just, we form through our thoughts what we are, but we can change our thoughts, therefore we can change who we are, even though, as we know, there are certain people who, have to go through surgical procedures and what do you call it, like hormone therapy, in order to change that. So it's
transition, yes.
Yeah, all transition. I'm trying to be respectful, because there are people who generally, that's a legitimate way for them to seek relief. But then, the way that has sort of been co-opted to then attack men and take opportunities away from them is sort of just another piece of this really disgusting puzzle. I think it's not very good. And yeah, you're right. It's like, as I described before, it's laziness. It's like they want the opportunity, and the only obstacle that they can see in their way is a man who is far more qualified and skilled than they are, and that's intolerable. So we got to get rid of them, because it's getting in the way of us being successful. So.
Now, one of the examples of this happening was. It was displayed on an episode of Full Frontal with Samantha Bee.
Yes.
And I guess they called it Me Toon. And it was an animated clip that showed a Me Too moment within the animation industry.
Yeah.
And it was very much like the Comic Book Whisper Network, where somebody sat down and started typing, this person made me feel uncomfortable and did this and did that. There was never any proof. And help me out with the names here, because you're more familiar with the names in the industry than I am. This was, I want to say Chris Savino. Chris Savino.
Yeah.
And for being accused of basically sexual assault, this was never taken to court. And when I say never taken to court, this was never taken to a legal court. This was taken to the guild court. This was taken to the union.
Well, quote unquote, the guild court. The guild doesn't actually have the jurisdiction to try its own members. Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I could provide some backstory on this.
You please do.
So, Yeah, this is a crazy story, and I still can't believe that it happened. You're right, and the Me Too thing on Samantha Bee kind of chronicles it a little bit. If you ever watch that segment, any of your viewers ever watch it, you'll notice some of the things that some of those women, some of whom I actually used to know, actually personally, they talk about how they formed a Facebook group. I'll get to that. All right, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what happened was the Harvey Weinstein scandal broke towards the end of 2017, and when it broke, everybody in Hollywood lost their minds. Partly because a lot of the people who were advocating for women's rights kind of knew that Harvey Weinstein had been doing what he had been doing, and so they were trying to save face by condemning him and going, full throttle in regards to sort of this Me Too movement. The Me Too movement was basically, it was an overcompensation. But the other thing that had happened was, because it happened in Hollywood, a lot of the quote unquote Karens who work in animation, who show up in that Samantha Bee segment, they internalized a lot of that, and so they looked at themselves and they saw a great opportunity to grab some power, and they said, well, who are some problematic males in the animation industry that we can eliminate? And some of those people were very high profile. One of them was John Lasseter, who got fired from Pixar Animation, but then he used his rich boy connections and he got hired to work at Skydance Animation. And Margaret Dean, the CEO of WEA, or chairman, she didn't like that at all, because it meant that she wasn't in control, and she wrote this massive letter trying to reassure everybody that she was in control, and that even though John Lasseter was basically, with the power of his money, which is the real privilege, managed to uncancel himself. But the other high-profile person was a showrunner for The Loud House by a man by the name of Chris Savino, and I've never met him, but apparently some of the women who I used to be friends with in that Samantha Bee segment used to know him, and they had claims that he was trying to get them to be in a relationship, and he was throwing his weight around as a result. And so they all got together. I mean, I think originally they all got together and tried to see if they could actually take him to court, but they couldn't because of statute of limitations. And so that wasn't good enough for them. They couldn't let it go. So they went ahead and they formed their own kangaroo court, or a show trial, to make an example of him. And it's very...
He showed up at it.
He did. This was before, I guess, everybody figured out that you're not supposed to apologize to mobs like this. I think he was thinking, if I just show up and I bend the knee and I grovel and I apologize, they'll just, they'll let me go. But that didn't happen at all. So they had their little show trial that they put up in the Animation Guild, and they made him apologize, and they made him sign this little contract saying that he was banned from so-and-so places, and he couldn't work in the animation for, I think, a certain number of years. But of course, that contract isn't legally binding, and of course, they didn't really keep to it, because he's now been cancelled indefinitely now. Like, there's no means for him to get his show back. And I guess Nickelodeon didn't want the bad press, so they cut him loose and they fired him from his own show. And damn, I'm blanking on the show name. The Loud House. So
Yes.
And The Loud House was probably one of their most recent big hits they had since SpongeBob and Avatar. So it was really weird. But just the way they went about it was just, it was really, really weird, really, really scary. Let me just say that.
I don't understand why somebody like Chris Savino, who gets tried in a fake court and has to deal with real consequences out of it that he disagrees with, doesn't go to a real court and say, I want to sue these people for slander and libel and removing my livelihood.
I mean, that's a good question. Maybe he genuinely did feel guilt, and maybe he was responsible for some of the things he was being accused of. Maybe that's a reason. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he had the money to do it. That's a tough question. I guess you'd have to ask him personally. I can only speculate.
All right. Well, let's take the example of somebody who's been accused of something that would be a crime, which would be waving a knife around in a studio. That's not something you get fired for. That's something that the police come and take you out for. And there's
Yes.
a record of this kind of thing.
Yes.
And you would spend some night in the pokey.
Yeah.
But what actions have you considered taking, or have already taken, to fight back against?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is the problem with cancel culture, or I guess canceling someone has multiple benefits, because when you make an accusation, you're essentially what's the word? You're essentially delegitimizing. Damn, I can't think of the word. Disproving or ruining their reputation to the point where no one will listen to them, right? And no one will want to have anything to do with them. And so I've lost a lot of friends because of accusations like that, and practically no one will help me. I've tried to collect evidence to no avail, because people who I thought were genuinely good friends, who have informed me about some of the stuff that they know about, I've asked them to give me some of this material, and they've just outright refused, with no explanation.
Have you ever been let go? Have you ever been let go of a job for?
I mean, like straight up fired?
Yes.
No. The only exception was probably the Bubbles production that I talked to you about, but that production had been, that had been canceled, so everybody had gotten let go. But all my time working in the animation industry, I've never been fired. No, I've either. Oh, sorry.
Have you ever called up for your own reference?
Well, what do you mean?
By which I mean pretend you're going to hire yourself and call some of your former employers and.
I haven't done that. That's a great idea. I'll do that. I don't. Well, the thing is, in California. Well, yeah. I mean, I would love to do something like that and record it. The problem is that California law means that you can't record conversations without the other person's consent. The only exception to that rule is if you're in an open public area and you're recording them saying something.
Right.
But I mean, I've tried to get. They have personnel files, right? I've tried to get those, and to no avail either.
You should be able to requisition your own personnel file. Even if you
the only time I was able to do it was at a smaller studio, and I knew that they had something, but they purposefully omitted it from my personnel file. So I'm assuming maybe they figured out that I was looking for something, and so they made sure to not include it in that. The other thing is there was something that happened recently, which was a breach of contract. I won't get into too many details because I don't want to jeopardize a potential court case. Okay. But I had applied, I had gotten offered a job this year, actually. For details that I won't get into, somebody talked to the producer, and then on the day I was supposed to start, they pulled the job on me. The day before, they were like, oh, welcome to the team, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day after that, they're like, sorry, you can no longer work on this team. And so that was breach of contract. Why? No, the lame reason was that it was because of COVID-19, which was bullshit, because everybody in animation is working remotely now. And I know this because another person on the team is still working there. So why did they get rid of me but not them, right? So that's the only thing that I have right now is a breach of contract. Unfortunately, I've talked to a lawyer, and their prices are somewhat exuberant. I think the prices they quoted me was $450 to $550 per hour, with a $1,500 retainer fee, and then a $10,000 court filing fee. And I don't have that money to do that.
Yeah, you
So
need to sell a lot of comic books to make that money up.
yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's a race against time, isn't it? Because of the statute of limitations, right?
Statute of limitations. And of course, whoever made the phone call that endangered the contract in the first place is somebody who could be sued for tortious interference, and we've all seen that happen.
Well, that's the thing, and this is sort of the problem right now, is that a lot of these studios are bending the knee to these people, and that's because it's just far easier to do that than because they consider someone like me completely ineffective, and I guess that's true because obviously because of the way I've been treated and the way I've sort of been excluded from the industry and essentially slandered to a point now where my finances are considerably diminished. Like I can't afford to take them to court, so they're like, well, we'll just fire him because it's cheaper and it's easier, and what's he going to do, right? So,
right.
Yeah, but the thing is, the only way that now that I can see it fighting against this is through litigation, and I don't know how I can do that at this point, because if I can take them to court for breach of contract, then obviously there's going to be a period of discovery, and then they can find that there's torturous interference, and then if it is hard to say, but theoretically, right? This is the pathway, right? I can, and so once that's discovered, then I can take that evidence and then sue them, and then that can then potentially lead to more litigation further down the line if it's shown that they're in cahoots with the quote unquote whisper network within the animation industry. But as I said, people don't want to have anything to do with me because they think I'm a murderous psychopath who, with no criminal record, for some reason.
Yes.
So
a man who wields X-Acto knives after drawing himself with a beloved character. and honestly, I had to laugh because the X-Acto knife was like an aside, and it's like, you wouldn't believe this. He drew himself as a self-insert. Oh my God, with Pearl, and Pearl's like doesn't like guys. And oh, by the way, he shoved a knife at somebody. It's like,
oh my God.
You lead with this, and then you say, that guy who shoved the knife, he's a crazy guy. He draws himself with cartoon characters. But the priority list, the priority that they put on what was wrong and what was not wrong was completely and utterly laughable.
Well, I mean, the other one that's been going around is that apparently that I'm difficult to work with, which is also completely untrue. So,
well, you're difficult to work with if they can't hire you. It's hard to work with him. They won't hire him here.
Well, it's like, how could I have a 10-year career if I was difficult to work with? It's like, I don't know where they come up with this shit. It's insane. It's like,
what would you say was the actual interaction that put you on the outs with somebody?
Well, I mean, it was a couple of things. Well, that's the thing. It's like these people are so insane where any slight is deemed as, an act unbecoming, an act almost on the same level as, say, rape or murder, right?
Sure.
So it could range from everything where I said the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time, and or I could be under a lot of stress, and I would blow up on someone because what they were requesting was completely unreasonable, and they were doing it just to I guess to just to antagonize me,
right.
to someone who just doesn't like the fact that I'm a significantly more skilled artist than them, and so because they're insecure, they would then think that if everyone's looking at my work saying, oh, this guy's good, that they're immediately going to turn around and say, well, this guy's good, why aren't you any good, right? Which has never fucking happened in the history of fucking animation. But that's the thing, these people are so, I think the real mentally disturbed people are the ones who are currently working in the animation industry, if I'm being brutally honest, because they catastrophize, They elaborate, they exaggerate, and they'll go above and beyond and use all of their energy to try and cancel someone who they see as some kind of competition, rather than redirecting all that energy into bettering themselves, which is what I do. So, I mean, oh, go ahead.
And by the time you had found out that all this was going on behind the scenes, that your name was being dragged through the mud, everybody already believed it before you could even get, what's the saying? A lie gets around the world before the truth gets its shoes tied.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. That's the other really insane and horrible thing about this, is that no one in the animation industry, even people that I had thought were my friends, none of them bothered to get in contact me and ask me what my side of the story was. And that's just ridiculous. It's stupid. It's like they would rather believe the lie than try and find the truth, I guess. And it comes back to this mental laziness that seems to have taken them all over. Like, they're like, oh, well, I heard this thing. All right, well, I guess that must be the truth now. It's all about who gets to the cops first. I know that's a bad quote, but it's whoever gets to tell the story first. That's the truth. And now there's a strange dichotomy now where I'm sure later on maybe I might run into them and they'll come up to me and say, oh, is any of this true? And if I deny it, then I'm guilty because I'm denying it. So then if I admit it,
apologize for it, it's an admission.
Yeah. So it's a no-win situation. It's a Kafka trap, which is what narcissists are, well known for. It's a no-win situation. It's a situation specifically set up just to make the victim suffer. In this case, me.
Now, we've mentioned what's happened to you, and we talked about the Chris Savino case. Do you know any other people? And I mean, actually know of them, not just know of them, who have been pretty much put on the outs of the animation industry because of this mechanized system of backstabbing?
I don't know of anyone personally who's done that, because there's this massive cloud of fear now within the animation industry, and it's mostly coming from most of the men who work in the animation industry, because they're hoping that if they just keep their heads down, that they won't get canceled next. But that's misleading. It's not a matter of if they're going to get canceled next. It's just a matter of when. But they haven't come to this realization yet. They think that if they just don't speak up and they just sit there and they behave like good little boys and bend the knee, then they're not going to be giving them the tap on the shoulder. But that's just such a cowardly way out, and the only outcome that comes from that isn't that they're going to survive. It's just that things are going to get worse. I've tried to tell people this, and they just don't want to listen. They're in denial about it.
Now, the thing that I would start to look for, and I don't know if it's possible or if it's just a different scale. When this happened in the comic book industry, obviously what sprung up was Comicsgate. And you had industry professionals as well as, new people who ascribed to the philosophy start their own thing. And you had, the Ethan Van Skyvers, you had the Dan Fragas, you had the John Malins do their own comics and do well at it and do it outside of the established mainstream. Is there any possibility, and I don't know what kind of infrastructure would have to be built up for it, for these disenfranchised animators to start their own animation?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
It will be for whoever comes up with it.
Well, I mean, it seems to be that I'm the only one right now. Everybody else is keeping their mouth shut because I guess, or not even bothering to reach out because I guess they've sort of seen what I've been going through and they've decided I don't want to deal with that headache. And I don't know. I mean, I have sort of toyed around with the idea of animation gate of some kind. The other problem is logistics. Like with Comicsgate, it's feasible because it takes very few people to make a comic, and then you can sell like multiple issues of that comic and make, you know, as we've seen, make $100,000 if it really kicks off. With animation, it takes a lot more people to make something because, you know, 1 second of animation takes anywhere from a week, to a month, and so, you know, obviously more hands make lighter work. It's animation is a way different kettle of fish. I would like to sort of do my own thing and do that, but the output would be so small and so distant from each other that I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible. I have seen, you know, some people who have worked in the industry. Are you still there, RJ? Oh.
My phone on Do Not Disturb, and I had a spam call.
Oh, okay. I have seen guys who have, you know, sort of left the industry to pursue their own endeavors. Steve Arn from for Blossom Detective Holmes is a great example. He was a director on Voltron series, and he crowdfunded his own sort of mini animated series. There are others out there as well, but there's not that many. I mean, you've got people like Vivian Medrano, who did Has Been Hotel, and she used Patreon. But aside from that, everyone just seems really separated. They don't really seem interested in sort of collaborating or getting together. And I don't know if that's just an animator thing or what, but yeah, I mean, I've looked for it. I've been looking for it, but it seems like I'm really the only one who's really speaking out about this.
Well, we provided one megaphone here. I would suggest, you know, especially if there's, you know, a legal aspect to this that you're exploring, you reach out to Nick Rekieta.
I have tried it. I can't get in touch with him.
Okay, well, everybody in the chat, tell Nick Rekieta that Fresher Luke needs to talk with him. There is Animation Gate happening here, and Nick needs to be on the cusp of it.
Well, this is the thing. Like this is probably I've tried to get on bigger channels to talk about this, but almost every time I've tried, like some unseen force has taken those videos down. The most recent case of this happening was I actually managed to get on Literature Devil's stream and to talk about this subject. And you know, a few days after I got off his stream, all of a sudden he strangely, for some reason, he took all those videos off his main channel and put it on another channel. And I had assumed that he was going to take also my video and put when I was on and put it in that other channel, but that video is nowhere to be seen at all. The first time I talked about this subject, about whisper networks, was and its impact on my life and sort of the industry as a whole, I went on George Alexopoulos' channel. And I guess because me and George had some kind of falling out, he won't tell me what it is that I did wrong. He took down the videos that we did together talking about this subject. The only other place that I've talked about this that I can think of that is still up is over on the Bunderdome, which I talked about before.
That's Tim Lim's channel.
Yeah, that's Tim Lim's channel. But I've tried to get on to Yellow Flash. He ignores me. I don't know if maybe my emails or anything are going to what do you call it? The junk email folder. Right. I've tried to talk to the Quartering about this. I've tried to talk to Raging Golden Eagle about this. I've tried to talk to a whole bunch of people about this. The only other place that I've talked about this, which I guess is sort of a middling channel, was Honey Badger Radio.
Okay,
and
I know them.
Yeah, they're great guys. I know Brian. He's a great guy. He's been the only other sort of guy who's actually legitimately listened to me about this, because, you know, this is literally a war on men. It's like it was men who built the animation industry, and now men are being persecuted because, you know, toxic masculinity, which is a bullshit term.
Right. And again, for the people in the who might be new in the chat listening now, the Women in Animation organization is, you know, working to achieve parity, has a stated goal of 50-50 by 2025. And what that means is if there are 50 men working entirely in animation right now, they want that to be half men, half women. And that means that the studios are not going to hire 50 more women so that it's 50 women and 50 men. They're going to fire 25 men and replace them with 25 women. So they have to look for reasons to fire them and get them out. And that's where this Whisper Network thing comes in, to get rid of people and then supplant them.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. Like with, you say women in animation, and that's all well and good. But I don't think most of the public knows just how far up, the food chain this kind of identitarian ideology goes. Like there's a video, or there was a video, but they took it down last year. Well, every year there's an animation sort of festival or conference that goes on in Annecy in France, right? It's called the Annecy Animation Festival. And so last year, Women in Animation actually had a bunch of panels, right? And one of the panels, they had all lined up there a bunch of female executives, like top executives, like VPs and presidents and stuff like that, who were in charge of some of the major animation industry studios. So when people like Margie Cohen, who was the president of DreamWorks Animation, gets up there, she says things like, if studios want to be more successful, they have to hire more women. And when Melissa Cobb, who's the vice president of originals and animation at Netflix, gets up there, she says, she looks for one of her female friends in the audience and says, you need to have a movie, right? And when Ramsey Nato, the executive vice president of animation production and development at Nickelodeon, is up there, she literally, quite literally, she says this. She almost is proud of herself of this fact that she had 3 candidates who were applying for production assistant at Nickelodeon, and she deliberately says that she chose a minority simply because of their skin color over the other 2 candidates, not because he was the most qualified, but because he was a minority, right? And so this is sort of what is facing the animation industry right now. Like, this ideology has gone all the way up to the top, and nobody is standing up to it. And it's the dynamics of it have to do with something that what's his name? I think it's Brett Weinstein said, the guy from Evergreen, right?
Yes.
He and it absolutely applies to what's going on here. There's like 4 groups of people. You've got the vocal minority, who are the ones who are pushing this. You have, the clueless majority, who are the ones who just go along with whatever, the vocal ones are saying, right, without any question. Then you've got the silent majority, who are the ones who don't agree, but they go along with it because it means if they don't, that's their livelihood. And then you got, the vocal, the other vocal minority, who are the ones who are against it, who are people like me, and they're the ones who get persecuted. And that's what's going on in animation right now. You have all of these male executives who are just sitting back and complying because, one, they're either, male feminists and obviously they've got skeletons in their closet that they hope no one will discover, so they go along with it and they actually actively support it and do everything they can to facilitate it. And then you've got, this, and you could also call those people simps in every term of the word. But then you have, I'm sure there's many men in the animation industry who are seeing what's going on right now. And I think some women as well. But I mean, I don't know, because none of them have, I can't get in, I don't know who they are, so I can't get in touch with them. And they're seeing what's going on. And they're, as I said before, they're just keeping their heads down and hoping that this will all just blow over. But it won't, because it's a boulder rolling down a hill. A boulder doesn't stop midway on the hill and just roll back up. It just keeps going down. So,
well, if you're watching this video and you are one of these people in the industry and you need to reach out to somebody who has gone through this and find some solidarity, be sure to go to Twitter and send Fresher Luke a DM.
Or you can email me at fresherluke@hotmail.com if you don't want to do
Hotmail.
I'm old school.
1996 called. They want their email back.
Hey, I'm old school. I love Hotmail. It's Hotmail.
It still works.
But no, I mean, that's right. I mean, even if I can't do anything now, at least we can get together and start to organize. because this has been going on too long, in my opinion. And
it's been going on too long in everything, and it's like you said, it's in, not just in the creative industry, it's in everything.
Yeah.
It's in education, it's in business, and we started hiring, we started trying to get this homogenous looking group. We're casting a CW show instead of hiring a team of people, and the end result is that we're throwing merit out the window in favor of optics, and we end up with inferior products. We've got inferior comic books coming out right now. We've talked about how we've got inferior animation coming out right now. Pretty soon we're going to have inferior everything, and the Harrison Bergerons of the world who can actually do something are going to be persecuted and pulled down so that they, are brought down to the lowest common denominator. God, Kurt Vonnegut was onto something.
I think he was, yeah. But that's the other thing. I mean, you mentioned that, all this mediocre stuff is coming out right now, but that actually has a bigger effect because, believe it or not, like these things contribute to the culture of a society. And if you're making stuff that's mostly propaganda, like society as a whole actually suffers. I know it's sounding like, well, it's just kids' cartoons. But, children are the next generation that are going to be carrying the torch after we're gone. And if they're raised on a bunch of malarkey that's not even based on science, like, the whole gender construct malarkey that they've been pushing, then you're going to have a bunch of people who can't discern what is objectively true and what is false. And that's a huge problem. That's a massive fucking problem. The other problem is that, American animation has a great history and we're losing it. And when we lose it and we put out these inferior products, people aren't going to support it. And as a result, our market share within the world shrinks. And so then other markets have to come in and fill that void. And I mean, while I don't have anything against anime, I actually like some anime. Like, I don't want to live in a world where all there is to offer is just nothing but anime. I want some variety,
Yeah.
So.
And what I've watched some anime. I've liked. I mean, for me, anime was Speed Racer and Battle of the Planets.
Yeah, same as me. Like, I grew up on that. But we got recent anime like My Hero Academia, which is great. But yeah.
Yeah, but when I look at it, they all look the same.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could take any character from Pokemon Go and throw them into a Naruto show and pick 3 different anime cat girls, and they all look like they belong in the same show.
Sure.
There's no distinctiveness to it. I mean, yeah. Now,
well, I mean, there's sort of
that, and then there's the Ghost in the Shell stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there sort of is, but I get what you're saying. It's all kind of homogenized, but I mean, you got to understand that's sort of Japan in a nutshell. Like they're always constantly iterating on everything that they do, and it's always incremental. But yeah, I mean, and part of it is they kind of don't really emphasize individuality like we do, or like we used to do here in the West, but we don't really seem to do that anymore now. And I feel like individuality is how we got great things like, name a favorite show American show that you used to watch.
Bugs Bunny.
Bugs Bunny, Johnny Bravo, Powerpuff Girls, right? Samurai Jack, right? Things that people remember fondly. There's probably a whole bunch of them, but now it's we're losing that. We're losing good stories because they've placed identity and this moral cause, this moral authoritarianism above individuality, above story, above merit, above talent, and that's not a good thing.
I'm old enough to remember when the censorship squads were the ultra conservative ones, and the anti-censorship people were the ultra liberal left ones. So that when look, they're pulling Huckleberry Finn out of schools because of this and that, and the liberals would come and say, you can't get rid of our American culture. This is censorship. This is wrong. And now it's
flipped.
The polar ice caps have flipped.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we've got to get Huckleberry Finn out of schools. It uses the N-word language. Never mind the fact that it was happening during slave eras, and it was how people talked, and Mark Twain was reflecting on that. Plus, they were the heroes. Uh, yeah, and that was a side note that came to me while I was thinking that anime is undergoing its own puritanical attacks from from the leftist side now.
Well, they're trying to do it, but Japan is just not having it. They're just not. They're telling them to fuck off. They're just not having it. And I say good on them. We should follow their example. Like this is the other thing. Japan has stopped copying the West, right? Like that's a big
They don't
deal.
need to.
I know, but for ages they copied everything that America did, right? For ages they tried to emulate America, but now they've stopped doing that. Like that's a massive red flag. Like we should be the trendsetters. We shouldn't be following their trends, right? Like,
Right.
oh man, but coming back to your point where people were saying, it was the right who were trying to ban Huckleberry Finn. I actually think it's got something to do with the Overton window. I actually think what has happened is what we're experiencing now is an inversion of that, but it's not an inversion the way you think. What I think is that in the middle is where the majority of the population sits, right? You have left of center, you have right of center, and these are the reasonable people.
The normies.
The normies, people like you and me, right? And then you've got the crazies on either end. And so what I think happens, like a pendulum, the Overton window like shifts from left to right. And so back then it was on the right, but everyone obviously as and we're starting to see it now. People are saying no, don't try and eliminate this stuff. This is part of our history. A great case is what's the name of that Disney film that with Brer Rabbit? Song of the South, right? I watched that when I was really young in Australia, and I loved that. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was like modern American folklore, right? Or a modern American fairy tale, because it taught lessons. But they're saying, no, it's wrong. We've got to ban it. But it's part of American history. It's giving a voice to which Disney has done. Like they always try and give a voice to different kinds of cultures. But funnily enough, now what are they banning now? They're banning what are they banning now, RJ? My brain is going kaput.
I can't think of what they're banning now. They're because it just changes from day to day.
I know but it's like banning ridiculous things for ridiculous reasons.
Luke, do you got a YouTube channel of your own?
Yeah, it's Fresher Luke on YouTube.
We've been asked to drop that in the chat here, so I'm going to do it.
Why can't I see the chat? I guess mine's broken. Oh well. Anyway, but yeah, it's I lost my thought. But yeah, it's I feel like the Overton window has gone all the way to the left now, and it's such because I think that window moves so slowly over like decades. Like when it actually does arrive at its end point,
right?
At first, people don't know how to react to it.
Well, you talk about the normies and the people who have sense, and I talk about how it was conservatives who were trying to ban things before. I was maybe 13 or 14, and my parents took me to church like a good kid, and I was doing the Saturday walk the neighborhood with the pastor. We were like just putting tracts in people's doors, letting them know where the church was and what the hours were and stuff like that. It was a visitation is what it was called. And I asked him while we were driving, I was like, there's this big thing going on with the Southland Corporation, which is, owned all the 7-Elevens. And a lot of the ultra-right conservative religious organizations were boycotting 7-Eleven because they carried pornography. And I said, is our church going to do anything with that? Are we going to, are we going to have a little sign carrying thing outside 7-Eleven here in our small town? He says, no, we don't agree with that. I was like, you're okay with them selling pornography? He's like, I'm not okay with pornography. But as soon as you start to ban pornography, it's a very slippery slope until somebody starts banning the Bible.
Yeah.
And like, that stuck with me. I was like, okay, that's smart. So yeah, this whole freedom of speech and freedom of literature that we have here in America is kind of important. And
it is.
Now we have, and it was the leftists who were saying, oh, pornography never hurt anybody. It's a great way to, you know, to feel good and express yourself, and it's
Oh my
harmless. And now they're the ones like, oh, you're objectifying women.
God.
So,
Yeah, they really like to flip flop on that concept because at the I mean my views on pornography. I mean, look, pornography is good if you're someone who's disabled and you can't have like a proper human relationship. It's a great way for you to sort of feel some sort of intimacy when you normally wouldn't be able to. But for the
Everything has a
average
purpose.
person like you and me, it's not really applicable. It's like, I don't know. It's like, well, I mean, I guess a great example is, marijuana. Like marijuana is good for somebody if they have like chronic pain that they just can't get rid of, right? It's just their life is just an endless barrage of pain. Like every step is a new nightmare for them, right? And it's a way for them to get relief. But for the average person, it's just, it's not. You don't need it. You don't really need it. Go buy a beer or something. You know what I mean? Like, God.
Exactly. That's
yeah.
like I'll take Stan Lee's example when we were talking about pornography. It's like boobs on your screen are great, but I'd rather have. They're like comics.
Yeah.
Boobs are like comics. They look great on the screen, but I'd rather have one in my hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Have we covered everything that we needed to cover here? Because I know there was a lot.
I know. Can you think of anything? I think my brain's putted out, but I can still go on if there's something we haven't covered.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote some people's names down here. There was an easy peasy video that somebody else did, and everyone said, "Oh, that's Luke."
Yeah, they tried to pin that on me. Yeah.
It didn't even sound like you doing the narration on it, so I don't know where they came up with that.
Well, no, what they were trying to do was they were trying to claim that I was the source, because I think in the video he said that an anonymous source came to him about all the stuff that's on that video, and they tried to pin me and say that I was the anonymous source, which was bullshit. But the thing was,
anonymous source to come to you, and then you'd have two people.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I actually, after that video dropped, I actually I followed sort of what he was doing, and he actually went on what was it, on Honey Badger Radio as well. And one of the things he said when he was doing an interview there was that after that video dropped, like more people in the animation industry actually approached him. And so I reached out to him and I said, "Can you tell me who these people are? Because I'd be interested in talking to them as well." And he wouldn't divulge their names. Yeah. And the reason he said why was because he had to maintain his integrity and not give out people's information. I guess because he didn't want, like, he didn't know who I was, and like I could have potentially been someone that could have persecuted them in his mind. So.
Well, even so, you can't do that without their permission. What the approach you take there is and say, "Hey, here's who I am. Give my name to these people and tell them they can talk to me." And that way, it puts it back on them, and he gets to keep his integrity of saying, "Yeah, if you're an anonymous source with me, I don't tell anybody who you are."
Oh yeah, all right, fair enough.
I would do the same thing.
Well, I mean, I haven't tried to get into contact with him since then, so I don't know. It might be too late.
All right. Well, it's never too late. Not while there's breath in our bodies. I've gone through my notes. I don't think there's anything else here. So with that, Luke, thank you for bringing this to our show.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of good information here, and I hope that people will come and watch it and get a better understanding of what is going on in the animation industry that parallels what we see going on in our comic book industry all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's happening, in acting and in all the arts.
Video games. Would it be happening in video games, do you think? Yeah.
I think that was the whole thing of Gamergate, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, Gamergate was the canary in the coal mine, wasn't it? That was the first sign that something was going awry. So.
All right. Well, with that then, everybody in the chat, thank you for coming by. Do check out Luke's YouTube channel. That's Fresher Luke. And of course, if you go to Indiegogo, you want to check out his Indiegogo comic book there. Help me out with the title again, Luke. I know it's something gods, and I keep forgetting what it is.
Forsaken Gods.
for a second, I kept trying to say disgraced gods. I'm like, that's not right.
No, it's fine. Like I've heard all different versions, like forgotten gods, and I think you did a different version before when I was here last time. Yeah, it's fine.
Forsaken gods, which makes sense because the whole thing about gods is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's more. I guess it's more a play on words. Yeah, as you've mentioned, but it's more of a fantasy thing. So I'm not taking a crack at our religions, our real world religions. No. It's all made up.
No, the language makes sense though.
Yeah,
it makes sense linguistically to use that word.
Yeah.
So check out the Indiegogo for Forsaken Gods. Subscribe to Luke's channel, Fresher Luke, on YouTube. If you like this kind of content here, subscribe to ours. We'd love to have you in the show all the time. And if you are pushing a comic book or an animation or a novel, if you're a creator, hit us up in our DMs on Twitter at Critical Blast and let us know. We'll be happy to schedule you in. Luke, thank you again for popping by, and we're going to take it out.
Thank you, RJ. Thank you for having me.
Hi. Thanks for stopping by for another Critical Blast video. The internet is a big place, and we know there are lots of other places you could be other than here, and we appreciate you being here immensely. If you enjoyed this kind of content, we hope you'll return for more. If you click the subscribe button, you'll get a little notification of when we produce new video content. If you would like to help the channel out, there are many ways to do so. Just visiting our main hub, criticalblast.com, will do wonders. But if you're more of a show me the merchandise type of person, there are links in the description of this video to our t-shirt shop, as well as links to Amazon for the books we publish under the Critical Blast Publishing imprint, including the urban fantasy anthology Gods and Services and the YA superhero novel Bulletproof by Stephen J. Mitchell. Thanks again for visiting this video. We hope you had a blast.